tulikuwa tunaongea na this lawyer naitwa pikipiki ponki Willis. Willis was telling us that according to him
ati piki ponki
ye mwenye ujita hivo pikipiki ponki
msewa nini pakamielo
yes. So tuko naongea naye na alikuwa anatuambia that according to yeye if Kenyan election results were clean in quotes we'd not need all that time. That by the first day by saa 6 usiku NIS waga wanajua nani ashashinda. What do you think?
Yeah. I'd agree with that statement. Even without like checking the facts.
Yeah.
Because if there's a job that the NIS has, it's to understand, it's to constantly check the pulse of the country, of the nation. And it would be remiss of any service like that not to know. In fact, they wouldn't be doing their jobs if they didn't know. So I'd wager that walikuwa washajua. Now what happened in the political sort of like war room is I think what changed the politics of our country. Na hii ndio kitu tunafaa tuiaddress juu many times I think watu wanasahau like Kenyans are some of the most brilliant people in almost every field. Security, business, whatever. And we have very, very competent people everywhere. And those competent people do their jobs 9 times out of 10. Kitu yenye inaharibu is that there's always this cabal of greedy people who are in the kitchen cabinet of this powerful situation. Anasema hapana, it's going to go like this. And those guys have now managed to influence and poison almost every important institution in this country. So that's why even when you have a competent intelligence service, even a more or less competent policing service, and I'm saying this like in quotes, a competent judiciary, as long as the people who sit on top of it can act with impunity, then all of those actions, and these people below them do not respond, then whatever the institution, it'll always have to bend to the will of these guys. And that's going to be the decider of whether Kenya succeeds or it fails. Can we ensure that, better or worse, the people that we elect guard these institutions jealously? Because if they don't, then these institutions will become rubber stamps for whatever it is they want to do.
But are you having interacted na politicians? Do you think there is hope? Because you know to interact now and like
let me put it to you this way. Every generation iko na struggle yake. But imagine that you were living in Kenya in 1986. You're an adult. You're politically active. And you're interested in what's going on in the country. Then your friends start disappearing. And before you know it, you hear that this friend of yours died in jail from multiple organ failure. Another one committed suicide by jumping off of the top of Nyati House, which is a highly secure building.
Alipataje dirisha ya kuruka.
Exactly. Before you know it, you're hearing that there are hundreds of people being waterboarded and sleeping in waterlogged cells, being electrocuted, some certain parts of their bodies inafinywa. And you look at the fact that there's no opposition, there is almost total control over the country.
No freedom of speech.
No freedom. If you are Kenyan in that time, what would you say about whether things would ever change? Ngesema hapana. So for me, I think we are actually in a much better position for things to be able to change. Because if there's any generation that can change this country, it's this generation. We have the knowledge, on education, we are networked. More or less, especially in the younger generations, there's the question of tribalism that we are dealing with. And the real issue, and I think this is why Ruto's campaign was so persuasive, the real issue in Kenya is now not an issue of umetoka wapi. It's an issue of hunger. Like the economy, and I'm not saying that the economy is more important than politics. I mean it in terms of what it is delivering to the people. When you have a discussion like that, then you create a completely new, different class and tribe. What I think happened in 2022 is that politicians took advantage of that. the fact that there's a very big change in the mentality of the Kenyan. And what they're doing is now ni kama wanatupea sumu, cynicism.
Yeah.
Not trusting the word of the politician, not trusting the ruling of the judiciary, seeing corruption happen around us. Ni kama unapewa sumu kila siku.
Yeah.
So it's us who need to say we're not going to take that poison. And I think this is a generation that can do it.
Okay.
This is, think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which politician that was like big from 2007, like big, with the exceptions of a few like Ruto, we can say Uhuru as well,
Yeah.
and Raila, and maybe Kalonzo. Which of their class, now the guys under them, do you think are going to be here in the next 10 years? Even these guys that we're talking about, they're exiting. What we should be worried about are the Sakajas,
Yeah, the next generation.
are the Sifunas, are these guys who are now capturing our interest now. How are those guys going to lead us over the next nini?
Yeah.
Those are the guys I think we should be watchful of. So ukiona kitu yenye nafanyika like dem mwenye anamsumbuanga nini Sakaja online, Hanifa.
Yeah.
That's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Man, keep these guys accountable every day, ndio wasisahau kuna Wakenya that need their service.
Yeah.
Alafu
kwanza hiyo ni kitu nilikuwa nataka kuuliza, una feel what's going to be the impact of TikTok in like future elections? Because I feel like nowadays since go live sana, do you think watu watakuwa kigo live kwa polling stations, and do you feel like that might affect altering of results?
I think it might. But here's the thing about where we are in where we're at. We are in a situation where you can go live from anywhere.
Yeah.
But they're also in a situation where people can really influence information very negatively, very quickly, using the same tools. So for me, the internet is a tool that has allowed for a lot of exposure. What we need today is something that we are tending to forget. It's discernment. Like when I go live, what is the reason why I'm doing this? When I do this certain thing. So ndio inaweza badilisha vitu.
Yeah.
And we'll get a lot more clarity from the ground. And even in terms of counting, we'll be able to do that. What we need to do with this power that we have right now is to use it with discernment and be focused on what it is that we're doing. And to remember that Kenya is not unique.
Yeah.
Other bigger countries have stumbled because even with the power of the things that they've stumbled. We need to now start thinking, if we want our elections to go properly, what do we do today? What do we build today? How do we keep guys accountable today? So that tomorrow when we're using our phones, it's not too late. Najua unaweza enda TikTok ukasema, ilikuwa ni hivi na hivi na hivi na hivi. But election ilikuwa imeibiwa last year. Look at some of our countries in the neighborhood. Mzee ameiba election the year before. Mnaenda kupiga kura nashangaa kumeendaje
in public participation.
Exactly.
Okay. Alafu how was it being like one of the last interviewers were Chris Msando?
That was weird. Not because like at the time, you're interviewing a guy, he's a director of ICT, he's, he seems fairly competent, he seems fairly confident. So you don't think much about it in terms of who he is.
Yeah.
What I was, rather interested in is like what he was saying, etc. But I remember when the guy disappeared, I was like, man, did we just interview this guy just a few weeks ago?
Yeah.
So for me, the trip was just all hindsight. Like, you're in a situation and you're in a room with a person who you're like, I wish I knew. I wish I knew that
this was the last time.
This was the last time, or this guy would be the target of so much attention and that he would be murdered.
Yeah.
But that's all I can say really, because he didn't tell me anything special, different.
It was just the confidence, because I remember nikiwachio interview yako akisema like there'll be no dead voters. We have all this. If this level fails, there's this level. This level fails, there's this.
So ilikuwa ni your confidence actually that spoke to me. But did I even think that this guy would be the target of something?
Alafu ushaisikia the theory, because I think it's the cop. We had a cop anaitwa Watenge. Was it Watenge? Like, I remember someone told us that the mistake that Msando did was your morning interview that he did at NTV. And he talked about his finger is needed. and was he mutilated? Finger yake ilikuwa missing? Was there anything that was missing?
I can't recall. I can't recall. But I think for me, no matter the mistakes that he made, the truth of the matter is that I think that plan had been set in motion
Way before.
quite a bit earlier. That's just my own theory.
Yeah. I make
Quite a
sense
bit
that
earlier.
morning na jioni wamshaifanya.
Quite a bit earlier. If you speak to commissioners from that time, they will tell you the kind of vetting that they go through after they are nominated and elected and join, like orientation yenye wanapitia. There are certain things that certain agents now start to reach out to them and tell them.
Yeah.
That can kind of tell you what direction things,
yeah.
So the statecraft around elections doesn't just happen on the day. I think it's the foolish politician who steals an election on the day, or the politician who doesn't have access to those things that steals on the day. For me, those things happen way in advance.
Yeah. Although na mufil ni kama 2007 really happen on the day.
No, 2007 I think ilikuwa ni tofauti. But also because kuna vitu ambavyo we didn't have in place, and let's face it, both sides stole in that election.
Yeah.
I know, not like sikujua ni kuona and pia kuambiwa people who went and voted 3-4 times for one candidate.
Yeah.
Right? On both sides.
Yeah.
I think 2007 was a contest about who stole more and who stole better. That's just my assessment.
Okay. And then nini ikikuja to like the stories that you've done, which one did you feel like was the most risky? Ile uli feel like hey jo, because kuna time pia sisi, remember like the way you are talking about like jokes zetu na kina RAPCHA, and sometimes we make jokes and I'm there like hata RAPCHA makes a joke and I'm like hii inaweza tuletea shida. Hii inaweza tuletea shida. So
kama juzi sijui alimwambia rais nini bana.
Ile story ya Jaba.
Niona huyu msee anatukuliwa tu jioni.
I think there's a worse one. Ile ina run saizi ni worse. So,
Right.
But I think that's the work of a comedian is to say what everyone is thinking.
That's
not
true.
saying.
That's true. So for me, the most dangerous, the most dangerous has to be Riverside, because there it was a live situation.
Oh, okay.
You know, I remember there was a time we were filming inside one of those places, those buildings where they're trying to nini. And by this time, a lot of journalists had come. Then someone shouts, "Grenade!" Where?
Yeah.
Guy had imegonga mic.
Isa.
Nikaishia, Kanye amewithdraw. Like it was scary, because you know that thing, if it explodes there, and it was true, there was an unexploded grenade too hapo too.
Yeah.
Hey, that was scary. Then you're there. I remember there was one time we were hiding behind some of those palm trees as you're going, and I'm recording on my phone, and then my mom calls. She's seen one of the videos that nilikuwa nimepost kwa WhatsApp sana, kwa Twitter imeenda. She was like, "Woi kijana wangu," you know. Then I'm trying to tell her, "Hey, relax, niko hapa ni nini." Then now as I'm talking, msee ametoa ka M16 yake and he's shooting at a building. I think my mom died like 10 times.
Yeah.
At call. I was even scared for her. So I was like, wacha ni hang up, alafu simu ikadai. But yeah, that was definitely one of the most scary ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Na ikikam to investigative pieces, kuna kuagana the story that the Saitoti crash also came with threats.
Haikuwa nini, haikuwa mbaya vile.
Yeah.
Me see, the one that I was most...
Was hii Saitoti crash, why is it kuna kuagana watu sema it was a political whatever? Was it an accident like from the...
So there are a lot of questions, like because of the autopsies that reveal certain things about the nature of whether there was smoke inhalation, you know, where the plane crash happened,
yeah.
why they went offline, why the pilots, some of them seem to have been unconscious and not in control of the plane, because the way it crashed. What people were saying is that maybe the pilot had lost
Passed
control,
out, yeah.
and passed out. So a lot of questions. So I think that's why from the Saitoti one was controversial, but also because remember, this is George Saitoti. He is a very rich politician, very powerful politician, has served in very important dockets, and so especially internal security, and so has a very strong network.
Yeah.
Is senior enough to have Kibaki place his hand on him as a leader and was considering running for presidency.
Yeah.
So he would have been a factor in as much as people walikuwa nasemanga ni colorless etc.
Yeah.
That guy would have been a factor. He'd have been a factor in an election where he needed. Now,
Year kilikuwa when? Was it
2012.
2012? Yeah, okay.
2012,
So a
year
year
before the election. So you see, that's why there was that political context around it. Now, and then now to add to that, those two questions about who he was, then remember there was Rannenberger who I think met him before he gets on the flight.
Yeah.
Like there were a lot of like very weird coincidences that happened around that specific flight. Even the guys who were supposed to be flying were not the ones who were the plane, the helicopter was not supposed to be the one. Like there were so many different things that happened. And to the extent that you wonder, is this one coincidence too many? It's just an unfortunate accident. That's why I think for me the Saitoti thing lives in infamy for a lot of people.
kusanaa pia ile ulitushtuaga nayo ilikuwa ile time ya Felician Kabuga, the Kabuga story. So
Ilikustua,
with this one,
ikanishtua.
with this one swali inakwaga, was Kabuga in Kenya?
Kabuga was in Kenya.
Okay.
Kabuga was in Kenya for a number of years, and that's been proven, not just by me, but by other people.
Yeah.
I think for me, why I felt badly about that thing is the amount of time and effort that we had put into that story as a team. And then for me to be slipped some bad information and then to have exposed a person who was innocent badly.
Yeah.
I remember watching it because that time we had gone into hiding. The threats were crazy. What maybe some people don't realize is that a month before the story ran, actually not a month, 2 months before the story ran, we had already started receiving like threats.
Watu wako wanajua inakuja.
Yeah, because at that time una reach out to sources, ni nini mtu anaongea na mwingine. So my wife had left work. We had to pull, at least we were young, but we pulled our kids out of kindergarten.
Yeah.
We were living in a different apartment. And the Friday before the story runs, we leave country. The Monday after the story runs, naingia kwa mtandao. And then, I'm seeing some strange chatter and then I put on my phone like an idiot.
Yeah.
And I start to get messages from guys from the military asking me, hey, where are you today? Can you attend a press conference at Ministry of Defense?
Yeah.
And it's a joint press conference by the police and the Ministry of Defense. And I was like, I've never seen that happen. Only for Kiraitha to trot out this gentleman with the military there. And I just knew, man, Appa, there's someone who must have got to me. And like my regret is more for what it must have done for that man and his family. Because, I knew at a certain point in time that my job was secure because of the kind of due diligence tulikuwa tumefanya kabla story run, but that thing really changed career yangu kabisa, and not in a good way in some ways, but also in a good way in other ways. From that day onward, I promised myself I would never be in a situation like that. At the day that he was arrested, May 26th, 2020, I remember getting that news and I'm like, finally. Like, finally I can put this thing to rest. Finally, these things will come out.
Where was he arrested?
He was arrested in Paris, in some rich neighborhood in France. Yeah, he was arrested in Paris. And the story of his arrest is incredible. You should go and read it. And so I was like, finally, like, things are going to come out, etc. And like, I can now breathe again, because that thing, it really hurt me. And then the guy is now too old, and I think he's suffering from dementia. He might not stand trial at all. So like, how it's a bit of a bittersweet ending. Not bitter, not even bittersweet. The guy is in custody, but he's useless.
So kwa nini nafikiria mtu aliamua kukutake on that wild, like, ama to discredit you?
Exactly. Ilikuwa in the interest of those people who discredit your story. This is my view. And I remember someone who's now fairly senior in government now telling me that that's exactly what happened. And yeah, I mean, if when someone tells the truth about something like that, can be very embarrassing. Especially in a region that all of us grew up and knew exactly what happened. It's 30 years since the genocide happened this year. So there'll be guys now, my 18-year-olds were 2007.
Yeah.
There'll be a whole generation that doesn't know. But you and I, all of us here, we know. We saw those things happening on TV.
Yeah.
We remember what the rumors were about how their bodies flooding, choking rivers, and we shouldn't eat fish. Like it was a strange, very scary and sad time. So can you imagine being the president of a neighboring country, and then your fellow president tells you, by the way, you guys have been harboring the guy who was important in orchestrating the murder of over 1 million people.
Yeah.
What do you say? What do you say? It can be highly embarrassing as a diplomatic incident. And so I think there was enough incentive for them to make sure that, the story went away.
Of course, talking of cost, are you the one who did this? I remember back in the days, anyway, ulifanyaga juu ya people who were getting sick because of, I don't know if it was a mining company.
Yes, on the metal refinery. That was the last story that we did at KTN. Yeah, it was us.
They won an offer, kituka hiyo kwa kotini ama?
So they won an award.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how injustice works. They were awarded, I think, 1.2 billion
I remember
shillings,
kitu kama hiyo.
which was one of the biggest class action awards ever in Kenya. Nini.
Yeah.
Guess who appealed? The Attorney General.
The Kenyan Attorney General.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the people who are being sued were NEMA and all of these people. AG appeals. And I think they lost the appeal, and now they're going to the Supreme Court. And for me, the thing about it is that it's not as if these people were faking their deaths.
Yeah, they're
like
sick.
they died, they're sick. Like we went there and we with their Nini agreement performed tests on 55 people. All of them in a community of 3,000 guys. So that's a fairly big sample size. All of them had lead poisoning. All of them. Unaona watoi wanakufa. Wamama, they can't carry their pregnancies to term.
Yeah.
Wengine wako na skin ailments, ingine yani ajab. And generally the health in that community was crazy. Like
So
from the time
also,
tulienda huko mpaka sai, I think I know maybe of 4 or 5 people who we interviewed who have died.
Yeah. Na hiyo lead poison pia affect watoi brain, sindio?
Exactly. Yeah. You mental development, especially when it's needed at a young age, they don't develop to their full potential. It's crazy. That's why watu waliban lead in paint and stuff like that in the 80s.
Yeah.
But you have a smelting plant right next to a community.
Because even that's why there's unleaded fuel, sindio?
Exactly.
Ian.
Cost of corruption, like what we're saying, the cost is not the billions that you see people stealing. It's how it affects the quality of my life.
Yeah, so the wife of a senior?
This one has to be now my final story. You guy nile tumekaa sana.
Watu watalia kustakunitana tu. Mi bado niko na maswali kibao. Okay.
One final story.
Yeah.
The wife of a very senior politician, ahead of these past elections, comes and tells me, hey, John, we really like what you're doing. We'd like for you to do a love piece about this guy.
Yeah.
And so I tell her, look, I don't do that kind of journalism. Like I appreciate
what's a fluff piece?
Like it's PR.
Okay.
PR too, yani just
portray someone in a good way.
In a good light.
Yeah.
So nini, so kamwambia huwa mi sifanyi story kama hizo, and vile nikuambia my credibility is what I eat, so I can't be doing those things. The only way I'd accept you doing to do a story is if I'm able to tell both sides and if I'm able to get hard access to this person.
Yeah.
She was like, the access we can organize, and the one of both sides, I'm not sure. Let me get back to you. Of course, she never got back to me. But why I'm telling this story is because she told me that for weeks she had been paying very senior people in a specific newspaper to have her husband's stories run. And they would run for a few days and then they'd die. And they'd run for a few days and then they'd die. And so she was getting tired of constantly going back. Anarudi kwa mfuko yani wanawalipa. Na si, unajua now ukiwa kwa hiyo level, again, nikukutajia ni nani, utamjua.
Yeah.
But when you get to that level, si basha ya thao moja ni 50k na
kwenda juu,
and I was telling her that that's the reason why you're never going to get fair coverage, because anybody who will come to cover you will expect that you're going to pay them. And that's why, like, guys blame the journalists for being subjective, but there's also this culture that's feeding this subjectivity, right? And I mean, genuinely,
Yeah.
maybe I've been out of like legacy media for a while, but a lot of the journalists that I come across today who are independent journalists, a lot of them are a lot more ethical than I remember legacy journalists being.
Yeah.
A lot of them are a lot more ethical, and that's why I was saying this young generation,
Yeah.
it can.
Okay.